it takes a few hours for the bleeding to accumulate in the person's eyes.
No, as soon as you break the skull bones and the heart's pumping, the blood comes out of those injuries. It starts to accumulate right away. It starts within minutes, you can see it.
So you would disagree with the suggestion that it takes at least 1 to 2 hours for that bleeding to occur in the eyes. You disagree with that?
I do disagree with that. It starts immediately.
So raccoon's eyes occur because there's leakage through the orbital fractures into the periorbital space. Normally, it takes about 24 to 48 hours to develop. It has been noted as early as 1 to 3 hours.
You mentioned that starts or takes at least 1 to 3 hours to begin?
Minimally, yes.
You had an opinion to the jury today, and you said that you believe that Mr. O'Keefe died within 15 minutes?
Yes, I think that process would start within 15 or 20 minutes.
For you to give that opinion, I'm asking you what objective information you have. And so you said that there was a large amount of force, correct?
Sure, because there were massive skull fractures, and there's a lot of energy transmitted to the brain, starts swelling immediately.
How do you know this wasn't medium force and not large force?
Because of the extensive number of skull fractures.
So are you saying it was medium or large force?
Medium to large.
Okay. How much force is that? Can you quantify it?
No. So that seeing the brainstem herniation tells you that the brain has swollen a lot.
Undoubtedly, but it doesn't tell you when it began to swell or the progress of that swell, does it?
I don't know what you mean.
Would Mr. O'Keefe, in your study and opinion, have died immediately?
No. Traumatic head injuries, you would not die immediately. It's a process. And it's a process of a combination of things. Brain swelling, which takes a while to develop. Decreased blood flow to your brain because you're getting swelling. And ultimately, death of the brainstem that controls your heart and your breathing. And so this is why there is a whole big issue about brain death. You know, when is someone brain dead? Because it's not instant and it can take a long time to be conceived.
This is an injury that took a little bit of time to develop, as is manifested by the fact that we have some bleeding, which means that the heart is still pumping and blood is still coming out of the vessels. So in my opinion, I believe the impact, the injury to the head came first. Mr. O'Keefe was most likely incapacitated or unable to move into a warmer environment, and then the hypothermia set in.
If a person is outside in the cold and still alive, will their body temperature decrease?
If they can, people can die of hypothermia, but that's not the case here.
Yes, the cause of death was due to blunt impact injuries of the head and hypothermia.
If somebody is deceased, does any blood pressure from their heart still move in their body?
No, they're dead.
So it's not going to spurt if you pull something out of a person's skin if they've passed?
You wouldn't get a spurt of blood from arterial pressure.
And I just pulled it, and as soon as I pulled it, it just gushed blood down his face.
To us, that's just a classic blunt trauma injury. There's nothing other than just vanilla about it. This is what happens when soft tissue hits a solid ground.
Would you characterize this as a classic wound caused by falling backwards and landing on your head?
What do you mean every wound is different?
Every wound is different?
Sure, every person's different. Every way you get injured is different.
Inch and a half? Do you think that if someone fell backwards and landed on their head, they could move an inch and a half?
Well, he landed on something that had a ridge on it to cause the laceration in the scalp. And then with a little bit of movement, those vertical scratches were caused by some kind of like pebbly-like surface.
And do you know what was under the grass, whether there was any pebbles, rocks, debris?
I didn't see any.
From the photo?
Correct.
It just showed a trace, a zero. There was less than an inch on the ground.
And so it's during that track a cat stage that there's the least amount of snow between the frozen ground and anything that may come down on top of it, correct?
Yes. There was a frost in the ground, the soil was frozen, and the temperature was unusually cold. The ground was frozen, the soil was frozen, and the surface of the ground was frozen. And it would have made the ground impenetrable, that hard, as hard as too difficult. We wouldn't be able to dig in the ground.
From a fall backwards on flat frozen ground.
Well, the laceration is due to the blunt impact, and so is the abrasion. The abrasion is friction. So depending on the type of surface, you mentioned flat frozen ground, it's quite possible to have an injury as the one depicted. I can tell you that the skull is a pretty thick bone. It takes considerable amount of force to fracture the skull. So that was a pretty considerable impact.
It was definitely something that caused some type of force, which led to the skull fractures and then the subsequent brain findings.
And the brain findings in particular that you made, were those consistent with the fall?
They can be, yes.
Can they also be consistent with being struck by a vehicle and then going to the ground?
Yes, they can be.
In order to eliminate bias, you're supposed to look at all reasonable alternatives, correct?
Yes, that's part of it, making a differential diagnosis.
So you don't just look at a person's body, come to a conclusion, and ignore other evidence. That would kind of defeat the purpose of differential diagnosis, wouldn't it?
Well, you always have to look at all the evidence.
And so if you didn't look at all the evidence and you disregarded some of the evidence because you had already made up your mind, that really wouldn't be the proper study of differential diagnosis, would it?
Right, I don't do that.
I'm sorry, ma'am?
I don't do that. I always look at all the evidence.
When you considered your differential diagnosis, did you consider whether there was any DNA on the vehicle?
I didn't look at any of that.
Did you know if there was any hair on the vehicle?
I don't know.
Any evidence other than physical evidence? Did you look at any data evidence?
I don't know what you mean, data.
Like data you would find on a cell phone?
No.
Did you look at any of the data evidence from the defendant's Lexus?
No, other than looking at the contours of the back to see if it had impacted Mr. O'Keefe.
When you were doing differential diagnosis, did you look at any information that would tell you what the speed of that impact may have been or allegedly was?
Well, it didn't hit him, so it doesn't matter.
Whether you agree that John O'Keefe's injuries, or lack thereof, are inconsistent with having been struck by a vehicle at 24 miles per hour.
I would say it's likely and unlikely at the same time, depending on the position of the body and the vehicle in question.
Are every injuries from a pedestrian collision the same?
No.
And why not?
It depends on many factors. It depends on the position of the body, of the pedestrian or the person being struck. It depends on whether they are moving or standing still. It depends on the speed of the car. It depends on whether brakes were applied or not. There's a lot of factors that come into play.
And at one point you said that his injury was inconsistent with a taillight, and you said because there was no damage from the bumper. Do you remember saying that?
I don't think I said it quite that way.
Okay. Do you remember how you said it?
No.
Do you remember discussing or raising the issue of a bumper as part of your equation, that the injury to Mr. O'Keefe was inconsistent with the injuries?
He has no injuries on him that are consistent with being hit by the back of the SUV. That includes the spoiler, that includes the bumper.
Okay, if we could play video E, please. I want to ask you, Dr. Laposata, have you seen this video before?
No.
Did you see anything in that video that would suggest any contact between that mannequin and the vehicle's bumper?
I'm going to see you at sidebar on this for just a minute, please.
Were any of the defendants' statements made available to you?
I did hear some of them.
Which ones did you hear?
I really can't answer that. I don't know what you'd have to give me an example.
And you said that could not have been caused by a sharp object?
Correct. It's not an incised wound. Incised wound means a bladed, sharp cut. This is a scratch, not made by a blade.
Were you aware the defendant made a statement that she pulled a piece of glass from the defendant's nose?
No.
He had a piece of glass, like, perched on his nose.
Superficial means that the abrasion is on the superficial layers of the skin, usually the epidermis and sometimes the dermis, but there's no penetration of the skin. Penetration would be measuring the depth. If there was actual penetration, I would have to measure how deep into the skin. In this particular case, you can see that these are scrapes or scratches, and there's no exposed underlying fat or muscle.
And according to you, there are many punctures in that wound.
Yes, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 or 7.
There is 0 punctures on Mr. O'Keefe's arm, correct?
Correct.
Yes, but there was clothing in between.
Okay, but the swabbings came from the clothing with tears in the clothing in the same area as the injuries, correct?
Okay.
Do you know that or no?
I couldn't tell if they came from the wound or the clothing. I thought that they came from the clothing, but...
And so you're equally unaware then that when that was tested, there was no canine DNA found from any of those swabbings in the area where the injuries that you're describing as scratch marks or bite marks occurred?
I wasn't aware of that. I must have missed it.
Were you also informed that that dog, months later, after January 2022, was involved in an incident in which it attacked another dog, humans intervened, and one of the humans was bitten?
No, I didn't know that.
Were you aware that there were photographs of an actual bite mark from that actual dog months after January 29th. Were you shown any of that?
No, I don't believe I was.
Mr. O'Keefe's shirts.
I don't remember that specifically.
And that those pieces were then found to be consistent with the defendant's taillight.
Like I said, I don't remember that particular part.
And so, yeah, so they were, I think they were sent to me, but I think I didn't open them.
Now, with reference to these technical difficulties, did you ever express any of those technical difficulties, or, hey, I can't see the whole file, or there's other things in here that are listed that I can't look at?
No, I wasn't aware.
Did you know that the U.S. Attorney's Office employed a deputy medical examiner to look at these bites? And then he had commented that the wounds at 2 to 3 millimeters up to 7 centimeters were documented on Mr. O'Keefe's right arm, and the injuries do not photographically appear to be, nor are described as puncture bite wounds, and thus are highly unlikely to be the result of an animal bite attack. Did you get that expert opinion from the United States Attorney's Office when they investigated this case to consider as part of peer review?
Objection, Your Honor.
Did you resign shortly after the audits and criticism?
No.
Same year?
Oh, I don't even remember.
Did you look at any data evidence?
I don't know what you mean, data.
So the closest I must have said was, did I hit him? I know I said I hit him, but did I really say it as many times as law enforcement's claiming I said it?